really anything about archaeology until I went to university and became completely obsessed with cultural heritage and archaeology of really the whole world, and then was very fortunate to begin working on archaeological excavations in Europe and in the former Soviet Union. I had, in graduate school, studied the region of Afghanistan quite a lot, but it wasn't possible to come here at that time. As an independent woman scholar, it just wasn't a viable country to come do work. So, but I always maintained an interest in the history of Afghanistan because of its location in the world, and so many cultures passed through here. The history is so rich. And a couple of years ago, a little less than 2 years ago, the State Department decided to hire a cultural heritage specialist in order to support U.S. initiatives to protect and preserve Afghan heritage. I work in the public diplomacy section of the embassies, so the programs that we do that involve cultural heritage are sort of diplomatic initiatives to identify significant sites in Afghanistan that are significant for Afghans. And so I work closely with a lot of Afghan counterparts to get to know what sites are the most important in terms of Afghan history. And then we try to identify here through the U.S. Embassy how best to protect those sites, raise awareness about them, both for Afghans and internationally. And the fundamental idea behind it is a country that has a strong cultural identity is the foundation of a civil society. Concerning the project Mesainak in Logar, that site is so complicated, but it is one of the most important archaeological sites in Afghanistan, maybe ever. And it happens to be co-located with the world's second largest copper deposit, which is very important for the future of Afghanistan, in that it can bring revenue to the government. And the issues are how to manage what Afghanistan has the most of, which is a very rich cultural heritage and very rich natural resources. And so from the position of the U.S. Embassy, I work as an advisor to the Ministry of Information and Culture, the Ministry of Mines, and as an observer and assistant in developing a management plan for preserving as much of the history as possible from Mesainak. The security situation in Ghazni in particular really limits the extent of what we can do in preservation work there. And I started traveling to Ghazni about a year ago to identify projects in cultural heritage that the embassy could support under the banner of Ghazni 2013, when the city will be the Islamic cultural capital of the Asian world. And I very quickly realized that any kind of long-term field work on monuments in Ghazni was not practical. It's simply not safe. So in an effort to kind of make some contribution to Ghazni's heritage, but to think creatively about what we could do, we've identified some other projects that I think are very valuable, though perhaps modest, but namely that I noticed none of the monuments in Ghazni have any signs on them, so you don't know what you're looking at. And so one of our initiatives is to create signs to identify these are historic places. There'll be some information about the history of the site. The signs will be in Dari and Pashto, and they should be installed later this year. Also, education is such a critical aspect of cultural heritage. You can preserve all the sites in Afghanistan, but if you don't educate the population, and particularly children, about the significance of those sites, the efforts are almost useless. So we decided to develop some children's books for all school children in Ghazni about Ghazni's heritage and how rich it is, and what a center of the world Ghazni was in the 11th and 12th century. I expect that the future of U.S. support for Afghan cultural heritage is very strong, that these programs will just continue.